goodies. All right, so let's come back to the discussion in studio. And gentlemen, I'd like us to start from, the kind of campaigns that we have been witnessing as we wind up. Of course, a lot of activity, so to speak. We've seen President Uhuru Kenyatta tour certain regions and also NASA on the other end. But let's talk about President Uhuru Kenyatta a few days, actually last week, giving some money to integrated IDPs in both Kisii and Nyamira. So far, how are the campaigns for you, Moses? And also considering, the back and forth that we're seeing between the two parties.
It's healthy. Selling your policies and galvanizing support from every quarter you can is a good idea. Mm-hmm. It's democracy. We've seen Raila Odinga gone how to drum up support for his NASA coalition, both in his own stronghold and Jubilee stronghold. Uhuru Kenyatta is doing the same. And I think so far, so good. The only backdrop was the shambolic nomination, which I think people have gotten over it. And
we've been forced to.
Yeah. We are in a country, we like moving on. So we've moved on from that easily. We've moved on from that. And there are two things I would say. One is that there is so much focus on peaceful election, that we must have a peaceful election. Yes, we must have a peaceful election, but peace will not come in isolation. You must also have credible election. There must be fairness, there must be justice, there must be equity. When that is done, there will be peace. You don't need to fight about it. It will just come through. But also, I think that's also, secondly, also is that there have been this question about the Election Offences Act, whereby the law, which is now being amended in Parliament, it prohibits government from showcasing its development records during campaign. Going to launch a project in Eldoret. That is not just about the president, but even governors. I've seen governors taking a full-page ad that I have been the governor of Meru for this is what I've done, using public resources. It amounts to using public resources to campaign. So I think also that's another issue that needs to look critically, because you'll also be you have an edge over and above those who are not in government, because you're using government resources to campaign.
Easy.
Yeah. And then finally is the issue of violence. I think there are less violences, but I think that NCIC is also working on it. There is a lot of, there was an ethnic tension in Eldoret between Governor Mandago, the tough between Mandago and Buzeki. Yeah. So there were so much undertones, but I think NCIC is watching on it, and we hope there will be less hate speech as we go through the election.
All right.
Yes.
Felix, how come IEBC has not said anything about this, the adverts we're seeing all over the place about different candidates, including people who are in government right now?
Honestly speaking, I don't know, and why they haven't. Why
they should, right?
They should. Yes. By law, the campaign period is technically being managed, or should actually be supervised by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Everything that falls under election offences that Moses has alluded to actually should be dealt with by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And it is not just government. The governors in the various counties are also equally guilty of that. But other than enforcement of the Election Code of Conduct, in our laws we have the election offences. In our laws we have the Election Code of Conduct.
Yes.
Whose primary responsibility again fall on the IEBC. It's binding on political parties, binding on candidates, and binding on IEBC itself. Issues, for example, of assault that we've witnessed within the course of the campaign, other than the DPP, IEBC, through its Election Code of Conduct Enforcement Committee, should actually take issues with. But just very quickly on the campaign, the conduct of the campaign, I think there is one thing that, if you look at the leadership of Jubilee and the leadership of NASA, there is something that they know about this election that has not been picked out by the various polling firms. That this election is closer than anybody else think. I doubt whether there is any presidential candidate. The two leading presidential candidates will be able to marshal 50% plus one on the first go. And I've seen arguments to the effect that, because we have two horses, we might potentially realize 50% plus one. But to the extent that this week alone, the NASA leadership is set to raid the Jubilee stronghold. And we've seen the Jubilee again raiding in the so-called NASA stronghold.
Yes.
They're denying each other 50% plus one. And I think if it continues like that, then we are potentially staring at a presidential runoff, and this country must be prepared for a longer electioneering period all the way up to December of this
All
year.
right.
Yes.
But I guess there's a difference between raiding and actually having votes, practical votes
yes.
from, the places you're raiding.
Yes.
But let's go back to what Ezra Chiloba is doing. He's before the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee talking about and answering questions to do with the ballot tender. And this ballot tender has had quite a number of issues from last year. And the opposition had come out to say that they will not agree to Al Ghurair actually going out and being part of this process by offering their services. What is this likely to show us in the next couple of days? Are we likely to see the opposition coming out to contest that?
There have been procurement challenges this thing of Al Ghurair has been in court since last year. And I think also at some point we may just need to make a practical decision that should we continue arguing over this, or we just, as you said, move on and swallow the bitter pill, because we have 58 days to election. Yeah. Are we going... 56 days, yes, to an election. Are we still going to go through a procurement process to, make IEBC also not ready for an election? And also another issue that I observed is that a budgeting issue. Why would an institutional body be denied a budgetary allocation? For crying out loud. That's the way also I come to support IEBC, that for us to operate, we must also be funded to do ABCD. And finally, to say what my colleague was saying is that, in this even budgeting process, is IEBC prepared for the runoff?
Yeah.
In terms of budget
yes.
and in terms of operation. Yeah? I even don't think the the big coalitions are prepared for that. And also I said we should also have this conversation to prepare the country psychologically.
That there could be
that
something.
we are in a long ride.
In a long journey.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Felix, as we wind up, does it really matter who takes this, who is the person who's going to print this ballot papers? Already it's there. If IBC has everything in place, the management system is okay, does it really matter?
It does. And there is a clear parallel between the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission and the Electoral Commission of South Africa. I like drawing this parallel.
Yes.
That in Kenya, the integrity issues around procurement has a direct impact on the electoral outcome. In South Africa, the Electoral Commission, in the last election, there were issues that were raised, integrity issues that were raised against the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. But with regard to the procurement of the premises that the IEC of South Africa now operates. Now, everybody in South Africa, including Julius Malema and all the political parties, were unanimous that despite the integrity issues with respect to that procurement, it had absolutely no relationship with the outcome of the elections or the conduct of the Electoral Commission chairperson who was involved to preside over a credible process. Now, the reverse is true in this country. Integrity issues in procurement are intended, they are directed to the outcome. And this is why. Now, with regard to specifically on these two procurement, I heard Ezra Chiloba talking about and giving accolades to Al Ghurair. I don't have any doubt in my mind about the capacity of Al Ghurair to deliver the ballot papers. The problem is with the process. And let me walk you down the memory lane. In election materials procurement, the last item that is procured is actually the ballot papers because it's done closest to the elections. Why did IEBC decide to procure the ballot papers and give it to Al Ghurair a year ago?
A year ago.
When this was challenged and that procurement process nullified, through a legitimate court process, this is what happened. This happened over 2 to 3 months ago. IEBC had an option of initiating that procurement right away. What did they do? They waited until the last minute and then decided to single source. The problem is not really with Al Ghurair or its capacity. The problem is the process by which IEBC has gone to procure or to issue that tender. Secondly, the Kenya Integrated Management System which was eventually, I mean, through an almost similar process and almost similar arguments. Ezra Chiloba saying that the commission has worked with the Al Ghurair.
Yes,
They
before.
say the commission has worked with Safran. That is not a ground for, issuing a tender. It is absolutely it's illegal to go that route.
All right.
And it was probably one of the most transparent processes, the procurement of KIMS. And when a company emerged the winner, in fact, all the other companies were knocked down on technicalities.
Yes.
And the company that was able to then go through the full hog, IEBC CEO unilaterally nullified that tender, claiming three things. One, that there were court cases. Again, that was not true.
Yes.
Two, that the ballot voter registration component of it had been overtaken by events.
All
Because
right.
the process was ongoing. Again, that was wrong.
Okay.
And then, what was the third reason? The third reason was that
Cost.
Cost.
The cost,
Yeah,
yes,
cost.
yeah, the
Now,
cost.
cost is interesting because assuming you go with the CEO's argument that the voter registration component had been taken by event, it means we already had BVRs that had been supplied.
Yes.
How comes then IEBC ended up awarding on the same budget 3.8 billion when they admitted that
They had
an aspect of it had already been supplied?
Okay.
It's interesting. Everyone, because of this single source
Very
thing,
briefly,
it's
where I
okay.
want
No,
to wind
no,
up.
just,
Yes.
it's a light note. Someone said, IEBC has single sourced KIEMS, he had single sourced Al Ghurair. People are afraid they can single source candidates.
The little single source candidate, interesting on a light note. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. Moses Chalanga, he is a lawyer, and we also had Felix Odhiambo, who's the Executive Director of Electoral Law and Governance Institute. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we'll continue with our coverage here on News Center, but we now want to cross over back to Parliament and listen to Ezra Chiloba. He is the IEBC CEO, currently making a submission and answering some queries about the ballot tender and ballot paper tender. So we will, all right, we seem to have lost that signal. So we'll take a break. We'll be back in a few minutes. Don't go away.